The blood on Rosa Reed's hands never seemed to wash clean, no matter how many times she scrubbed them raw in the wooden basin behind the weaving shed. She had killed a man 3 years ago in Santa Fe, and though it had been self-defense when her stepfather had come at her with a knife, the law had not seen it that way. Now she lived in the shadows of White Oaks, New Mexico territory, in the year 1882, weaving cloth for the general store owner who knew enough not to ask questions about the woman who only worked at night and disappeared before dawn broke over the Jicarilla Mountains. The loom sat in the back room of Morrison's general store, a place where the lamplight barely reached and the windows had been painted black at Rosa's request. She was 23 years old and felt ancient, her fingers moving across the threads with mechanical precision, creating beautiful patterns that women throughout Lincoln County would admire without ever knowing who had made them. The work was solitary, exactly as she needed it to be. She arrived after the store closed at 8 in the evening and left before it opened at 6 in the morning, slipping through the back door like a ghost. The only person she ever saw was Mr. Morrison himself, who left her payment in a tin box every Saturday and took the finished cloth every Monday. Rosa had become skilled at being invisible. She kept her dark hair tied back in a severe bun, wore dresses the color of dust and shadows, and never looked anyone in the eye on the rare occasions when she had to venture out during daylight hours for supplies. The other women in White Oaks whispered about her, she knew. The strange woman who lived in the old adobe house at the edge of town, the one who never attended church or social gatherings, who seemed to have no family and no past. Let them whisper. It was safer than the truth. The night air was cold when she finished her work on that particular Wednesday in October, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders as she slipped out the back door of the store. The streets were empty at this hour, most respectable people long since in their beds. She walked quickly, her boots making soft sounds on the hard, packed dirt, keeping to the darkest parts of the road. She was so focused on remaining unseen that she did not notice the three men until she had nearly walked into them. Well, what do we have here?" The voice was slurred with whiskey, and Rosa's heart seized in her chest. She recognized them as cowhands from one of the nearby ranches, men who spent their wages on rot-gut liquor at the Lucky Dollar Saloon. "I am just passing through," Rosa said quietly, trying to step around them. "Please excuse me." One of them, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, moved to block her path. "Not so fast, señorita. We do not see you around much. Why are you out so late?" "That is my business," Rosa replied, keeping her voice steady despite the fear rising in her throat. She had not survived 3 years in hiding to be accosted by drunken cowboys. Her hand moved toward the small knife she kept tucked in her boot. "Maybe we want to make it our business," another one said, reaching for her arm. Rosa jerked away, but there were 3 of them and only one of her, and they were spreading out to surround her. Her mind raced, calculating distances, looking for escape routes. The nearest occupied house was 2 blocks away, too far to run. She opened her mouth to scream, knowing it might bring questions she could not answer, but preferring that to the alternative. The scream never left her throat. A massive shape materialized from the darkness behind the men, and suddenly the one who had reached for her was flying backward through the air, landing hard in the dirt 10 feet away. The other 2 spun around, but they were too slow and too drunk. The newcomer moved with surprising speed for someone so large, his fist connecting with the scarred man's jaw with a sound like an axe hitting wood. The third man took one look at what was happening and ran. Rosa stood frozen, her back against the wall of the building behind her, watching as her rescuer bent over the 2 men on the ground. "You have 5 seconds to get out of here before I really get angry," he said, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. They did not need to be told twice. They scrambled to their feet and fled into the darkness, one of them clutching his jaw, the other limping badly. The stranger turned to face Rosa, and in the dim light from a nearby window, she got her first good look at him. He was enormous, well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed almost too broad to be real. His hair fell past his shoulders in dark waves, and his face was weathered and tanned from long hours in the sun. His arms, visible where his sleeves were rolled up, were corded with muscle. He wore buckskin pants and a heavy wool shirt, and there was something wild about him, something that spoke of mountains and open spaces rather than towns and civilization. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentler now but still carrying that deep, resonant quality. Rosa shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought he might hear it. "What are you doing out here alone at this hour?" There was no judgment in his tone, only concern. "I work late," Rosa managed to say. "I was going home." He studied her for a long moment, and Rosa felt exposed in a way she had not felt in years. It was as if those pale eyes could see right through her carefully constructed walls. "I will walk you," he said finally. "It is not safe." "That is not necessary," Rosa protested, but he was already moving, positioning himself beside her in a way that was protective rather than threatening. "It is necessary," he said simply. "Which way?" Rosa hesitated, then realized she had little choice. "The adobe house on the eastern edge of town," she said quietly. They walked in silence through the dark streets, the stranger maintaining a respectful distance, but staying close enough that his presence was a solid, reassuring thing. Rosa found herself stealing glances at him, wondering who he was and where he had come from. She had never seen him in White Oaks before, and she would have remembered someone like him. When they reached her small house, she turned to face him. "Thank you," she said. "I am grateful for your help." "What is your name?" he asked. Rosa knew she should not tell him. Every instinct she had developed over 3 years of hiding screamed at her to maintain her anonymity, to remain a shadow. But something about this man, this stranger who had appeared out of nowhere to protect her, made her want to be real for just a moment. "Rosa Reed," she said. "Warren Ryder," he replied. "I am pleased to meet you, Miss Reed, though I wish it had been under better circumstances." "You are not from White Oaks," Rosa observed. "No, I am a trapper mostly. I live up in the mountains, come down to town maybe twice a year for supplies. I was just leaving the general store when I heard voices and thought I should investigate." He paused, then added, "I am glad I did." "As am I," Rosa admitted. She stood there for another moment, unsure what else to say. She was not accustomed to conversation, and certainly not with strange men in the middle of the night. "I should go inside." "You should," Warren agreed. "Will you be safe?" "Yes, thank you again, Mr. Ryder." He touched the brim of his hat in a gesture that seemed old-fashioned even for 1882. "Good night, Miss Reed." Rosa slipped inside her house and locked the door behind her, then moved to the window and watched as Warren Ryder's large form disappeared into the darkness. Her hands were shaking, she realized, but not from fear. Something had shifted in that brief encounter, though she could not name what it was. She pressed her palm against the cool adobe wall and tried to calm her racing thoughts. The next evening, Rosa arrived at the general store as usual, letting herself in through the back door with the key Mr. Morrison had given her. She settled at her loom and began to work, losing herself in the familiar rhythm of the shuttle passing through the warp threads. She had been working for perhaps an hour when she heard voices from the front of the store. That was unusual. Morrison always made sure the store was empty before Rosa arrived. "I am telling you, it is the best quality you will find this side of Santa Fe," she heard Morrison saying. My weaver is extraordinarily skilled. I would like to see some examples, a deep voice replied, and Rosa's hand stilled on the loom. She knew that voice. Of course, of course. Let me just fetch a few pieces from the back. Rosa barely had time to stand before Morrison appeared in the doorway, his arms full of folded cloth. He saw her standing there and smiled apologetically. Sorry to disturb you, Rosa. I have a customer who wants to see your work. Nothing to worry about. But Rosa was worried. She could not be seen, could not risk questions or recognition. She moved toward the back door, intending to slip out into the night, but Morrison was already returning to the front of the store, leaving the door open behind him. Through it, Rosa could see Ryder standing at the counter, examining a length of cloth she had woven the previous week. "This is fine work," Warren was saying. "Very fine indeed. I need blankets, several of them, and I would pay well for quality like this." "My weaver can certainly make blankets," Morrison said eagerly. "How many do you need?" 6, heavy wool, suitable for mountain winters. "That will take a few weeks, but it can be done. Would you like to meet the weaver, discuss the specifications?" "Yes," Warren said, and Rosa felt her heart drop. Morrison turned toward the back room and gestured for Rosa to come forward. For a wild moment she considered refusing, but that would only create more questions. Slowly, reluctantly, she moved into the front of the store, keeping her eyes down. "This is Miss Reed, my weaver," Morrison announced proudly. "Miss Reed, this is Mr. Ryder. He would like to commission some blankets." Rosa forced herself to look up and found Ryder staring at her with an expression of genuine surprise. "Miss Reed," he said slowly. "What a coincidence." "Mr. Ryder," Rosa acknowledged, her voice barely above a whisper. "You two know each other?" Morrison asked, looking between them. "We met briefly last night," Warren explained. "I had no idea Miss Reed was the talented weaver you have been describing." "This makes the commission even more appealing." Morrison beamed. "Excellent, excellent. Well, I will leave you two to discuss the details. Miss Reed knows what she is doing better than I do anyway." He retreated to the back corner of the store, ostensibly to organize some inventory but clearly giving them privacy. Warren stepped closer to Rosa, lowering his voice. "I truly did not know you worked here. I would not have pressed to meet you if I had realized it would make you uncomfortable." "It is fine," Rosa said, though it was not fine at all. Her carefully maintained anonymity was crumbling. "What kind of blankets do you need?" They spent the next 20 minutes discussing weights and patterns, and despite her discomfort, Rosa found herself relaxing slightly. Warren was respectful and genuinely interested in her craft, asking intelligent questions about the weaving process. His hands, she noticed, were scarred and calloused, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. There was something reassuring about that. "How long have you been weaving?" Warren asked at one point. "Since I was a child. My mother taught me." The words came out before Rosa could stop them, a fragment of truth escaping her careful control. "She must have been a skilled teacher. This work is exceptional." Rosa felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. She was not accustomed to praise or to any kind of positive attention. "Thank you." When they had settled all the details and Warren had paid a deposit, he lingered for a moment. "Miss Reed, I know this is forward of me, but I wonder if you would allow me to walk you home again tonight. Just to make sure those men from yesterday are not waiting for another chance." "I am sure they will not bother me again," Rosa said. "Perhaps not, but it would ease my mind to know you arrived home safely." Rosa looked at him, really looked at him, and saw genuine concern in his face. It had been so long since anyone had cared about her well-being that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. "If it would ease your mind," she said softly, "then I will not refuse." Warren smiled, and it transformed his rugged face entirely. "Thank you." I will wait outside when you are finished working." He left, and Rosa returned to her loom, but she found it difficult to concentrate. Her mind kept drifting to the man waiting outside, to the way he had appeared out of the darkness to defend her, to the gentleness in his voice when he spoke to her. It was dangerous to let anyone get close. Every friendship was a potential betrayal, every connection a thread that could lead back to Santa Fe, and the murder charge that still hung over her head. But when she finally emerged from the store 4 hours later, Warren was there as promised, leaning against the wall of the building with his arms crossed over his broad chest. He straightened when he saw her and fell into step beside her without a word. They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds the scuff of their boots on the hard ground and the distant howl of a coyote somewhere in the hills. Rosa was acutely aware of his presence beside her, of the way he moved with an easy confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. "How long have you been living in White Oaks?" Warren asked eventually. 3 years, Rosa answered, then added, "I keep to myself mostly." "I noticed that you work at night. Is there a reason?" Rosa tensed. This was exactly the kind of question she could not answer honestly. "I prefer it," she said carefully. "The quiet helps me concentrate." Warren nodded, accepting this without pressing further. "I understand wanting solitude. That is why I live in the mountains. Too many people in one place makes me uncomfortable. Yet you come to town for supplies." "Necessity, not preference. I make my living trapping and hunting, and I need to sell the furs and pelts somewhere. But I am always glad to get back to my cabin when the business is done." "Where exactly do you live?" Rosa asked, surprising herself with her curiosity. "About 15 miles north, up in the high country. There is a valley there, good water, plenty of game. I built a cabin 5 years ago when I first came to New Mexico territory. It is rough living, but it suits me." "You do not get lonely?" Warren was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But loneliness is better than being surrounded by people and still feeling alone. That was my experience in the cities back east." "You are from the east, Boston, originally. But that was another life. I came west after the war, looking for something different. I found it in the mountains." They had reached Rosa's house, and she turned to face him. "Thank you for walking me home again, Mr. Ryder." "Warren," he said. "Please call me Warren." "Warren," Rosa repeated, tasting the name. "Then you must call me Rosa." "Rosa," he said, and she liked the way it sounded in his deep voice. "I will be in town for a few more days, getting supplies and conducting business. May I walk you home each night until I leave?" Rosa knew she should say no. Every additional interaction was a risk, a crack in the armor she had built around herself, but she found herself nodding. "If you wish." "I do wish," Warren said simply. "Good night, Rosa." "Good night, Warren." Over the next 3 nights, Warren was waiting when Rosa emerged from the general store, and each night they walked together through the dark streets to her house. They talked more with each walk, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. Warren told her about his life in the mountains, about tracking elk through the snow and watching eagles soar over the peaks. Rosa, in turn, shared small pieces of her past, carefully edited to omit anything that might reveal the truth she was hiding. She told him about learning to weave as a child in Santa Fe, about her love of the desert landscape, about the satisfaction she found in creating beautiful things with her hands. On the 4th night, Warren told her he would be leaving in the morning. "But I will be back in 6 weeks to check on the progress of the blankets," he said. "And perhaps, if you would allow it, I could write to you while I am in the mountains. I have someone who brings my mail when they pass through White Oaks." Rosa hesitated. Letters meant a connection, a tie that bound her to another person. But she found that she wanted that connection, wanted to hear from this strange, gentle giant who had stumbled into her carefully controlled world. "I would like that," she said. Warren's face lit up. "Then I will write. And you must write back if you can spare the time." "I will have nothing but time," Rosa said with a slight smile. "My evenings are quite empty when I am not working." They stood outside her house, and for the first time since her mother had died when Rosa was 15, she felt a pang of genuine loneliness at the thought of someone leaving. "Travel safely," she said. "I will. And Rosa," he paused, seeming to struggle with something, "I am glad I met you. Glad I was there that night when you needed help. It feels like fate somehow." "I do not believe in fate," Rosa said, but her voice was soft, without conviction. "Perhaps you will change your mind." Warren reached out and gently touched her hand, the briefest contact, but it sent warmth flooding through Rosa's entire body. Then he was gone, striding away into the darkness, and Rosa was left standing alone with her hand tingling where he had touched it. The first letter arrived 2 weeks later. Mr. Morrison handed it to Rosa when she arrived at the store that evening, a knowing smile on his weathered face. "Looks like you have made an impression on the mountain man," he said. Rosa took the envelope without comment and tucked it into her pocket, waiting until she was alone at her loom to open it. Warren's handwriting was surprisingly neat for a man who spent most of his time in the wilderness. "Dear Rosa, I hope this letter finds you well and that you have not been troubled by any more drunken cowboys. I have been thinking about our conversations during those nights I walked you home, and I find myself wanting to continue them, even across this distance. The mountains are beautiful this time of year. The aspen trees have turned gold, and when the wind blows, it sounds like music. I saw a bear yesterday, a huge old male getting ready for winter. We watched each other for a long moment, two solitary creatures acknowledging each other's existence, then went our separate ways. I realize I do not know very much about you, Rosa Reed, and I find myself wanting to know more. What is your favorite time of day? What do you think about when you are working at your loom? What are your dreams for the future? I will understand if these questions are too personal. I know you value your privacy, and I do not wish to intrude, but I hope you will share what you can. Yours, Warren. Rosa read the letter 3 times that night, her fingers tracing the words. No one had asked about her dreams in years. No one had cared what she thought about or wanted. She took out a piece of paper and a pencil and began to write, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence. Dear Warren, thank you for your letter. It was a pleasant surprise to receive it. I am glad to hear that you made it back to your cabin safely and that the mountains are treating you well. To answer your questions, my favorite time of day is just before dawn, when the world is quiet and still and full of possibility. When I am working at my loom, I think about patterns and colors, about the feel of the thread in my hands. Sometimes I think about nothing at all, and that is when I am most at peace. As for my dreams, I do not allow myself to dream very much. I have found it is safer to focus on the present moment rather than hoping for things that may never come to pass. The work on your blankets is progressing well. I have finished 2 of them already. I am using a pattern I learned from my mother, a design that is supposed to bring warmth and protection to whoever sleeps beneath it. Please write again when you have time. I find that I enjoy hearing about your life in the mountains. It is so different from my own existence here in White Oaks. Sincerely, Rosa. She gave the letter to Mr. Morrison the next day, and he promised to make sure it reached the man who delivered mail to the mountain folk. 3 weeks later, another letter arrived, and then another, and soon Rosa found herself living for those communications. Warren wrote about the changing seasons, about the animals he encountered, about the books he read by firelight in his cabin. He asked questions that made Rosa think, that challenged her to examine her own thoughts and feelings in ways she had not done in years. Rosa, in turn, found herself opening up in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. She wrote about the satisfaction she found in her craft, about the beauty she saw in the stark New Mexico landscape, about the loneliness of her existence, even as she maintained that she preferred solitude. She was careful never to reveal too much about her past, but she shared pieces of herself that she had kept locked away for so long. The weeks passed, and Rosa finished all 6 blankets. They were some of the best work she had ever done, each one heavy and warm and woven with a care that went beyond mere craftsmanship. She folded them carefully and stored them in the back room of the store, waiting for Warren to return. He arrived on a cold morning in early December, riding into White Oaks on a massive horse that looked as wild as he did. Rosa was home when he came, trying to sleep as she did during the day, but Mr. Morrison sent word that Warren had arrived and was asking for her. She dressed quickly, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear. When she entered the general store, Warren was standing at the counter, and the sight of him took her breath away. He seemed larger than she remembered, more solid and real. His hair was longer now, touching his shoulders, and his beard had grown in thick and dark. He was wearing a heavy coat made from animal hides, and he looked every inch the mountain man he claimed to be. He turned when he heard her enter, and his face broke into that transformative smile. "Rosa," he said, and it was like coming home to a place she had never known she was looking for. "Warren," she replied, and she could not keep the joy from her voice. "You are back. I said I would be." He moved toward her, then stopped, seeming to remember the proprieties. "I came to see the blankets, but I must confess, I was hoping to see you even more." Rosa felt her cheeks flush. "The blankets are ready. Would you like to examine them?" They went to the back room, and Rosa showed him her work. Warren ran his hands over each blanket, examining the weaving with an expert eye. "These are magnificent," he said finally. "Even better than I hoped. You have a true gift, Rosa." "Thank you," Rosa said quietly. "I wanted them to be perfect for you." Warren looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made Rosa's breath catch. "Rosa, I need to tell you something. I have been thinking about you constantly since I left. Your letters have meant more to me than I can express. I know we have only known each other for a short time, but I feel a connection to you that I have never felt with anyone else." Rosa's heart was racing. She wanted to tell him that she felt the same way, that his letters had been the bright spots in her shadowed existence, that she had been counting the days until he returned. But fear held her back. "Warren, there are things about me you do not know, things that might change how you feel." "Then tell me," he said simply. "Trust me with your truth." Rosa looked into his eyes, those pale blue eyes that seemed to see into her very soul, and she made a decision. For 3 years she had lived in the shadows, afraid of the light, afraid of being seen. But Warren made her want to step into the light, to be real and known and accepted. "Not here," she said. "Come to my house tonight after the store closes. I will tell you everything." Warren nodded. "I will be there." The hours until nightfall crawled by. Rosa tried to work at her loom, but her hands were shaking too badly to manage the threads. She gave up and returned home early, pacing the small rooms of her adobe house, trying to find the words to explain what she had done and why she had been hiding for so long. When the knock came at her door just after 8, Rosa jumped despite expecting it. She opened the door to find Warren standing there, his hat in his hands, looking nervous in a way that seemed incongruous for such a large, powerful man. "Come in," Rosa said, stepping aside. Warren entered, having to duck slightly to clear the doorframe. He looked around the small house, taking in the simple furnishings and the loom that stood in the corner. "This is nice," he said, "peaceful." "It has been a refuge," Rosa replied. She gestured to the table. "Please sit." They sat across from each other, and Rosa took a deep breath. "What I am about to tell you could change everything between us. You might decide you want nothing to do with me after you hear it, but I cannot let this continue without being honest with you." "Rosa, whatever it is, it will not change how I feel about you," Warren said, reaching across the table to take her hand. His hand was so much larger than hers, so warm and solid. "Tell me." So Rosa told him. She told him about growing up in Santa Fe, about her mother dying when she was 15, and being left with a stepfather who drank too much and became violent when he was drunk. She told him about working at a boarding house, trying to save enough money to leave, about her stepfather finding her one night when she was walking home from work. She told him about the knife, about how he had attacked her in a drunken rage, about how she had fought back and how her own knife, the one she carried for protection, had ended up buried in his chest. "I did not mean to kill him," Rosa said, her voice breaking. "I only meant to defend myself. But he was dead, and I was covered in his blood, and when I went to the sheriff, he said it looked like murder to him. He said a jury would never believe that a young woman could overpower a grown man in self-defense. He said they would hang me." Tears were streaming down her face now, years of held-back grief and fear pouring out. "So I ran. I took what little money I had saved and I came here to White Oaks where no one knew me. I changed my name, took my mother's maiden name instead of my stepfather's. I started working at night so no one would see me, so no one would ask questions. I have been hiding for 3 years, Warren, living in the shadows because I am afraid that if anyone knows the truth, they will send me back to Santa Fe to hang for defending my own life." Warren had not let go of her hand through the entire story. Now he squeezed it gently, and when Rosa finally looked up at him through her tears, she saw no judgment in his face, only compassion and anger on her behalf. "What you did was not murder," he said firmly. "You defended yourself against a man who was trying to kill you. Any reasonable person would understand that." "The sheriff did not understand it," Rosa said bitterly. "The law did not understand it. Then the law is wrong." Warren stood and came around the table, pulling Rosa to her feet and into his arms. She stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against his chest, sobbing out years of fear and loneliness. Warren held her, one large hand stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances. "You are safe," he said. "I will not let anyone hurt you. I promise you that, Rosa." They stood like that for a long time, until Rosa's tears finally subsided and she became aware of the warmth of Warren's body against hers, of the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek, of the strength in the arms that held her. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "You are not afraid to be associated with a fugitive?" she asked. "You are not a fugitive in my eyes. You are a brave woman who survived something terrible and has been paying for it ever since. And Rosa, I meant what I said in my letters. I have fallen in love with you. That has not changed." Rosa's breath caught. "You love me." "I do. I think I started falling in love with you that first night when you were so scared but still so strong, trying to face down those men on your own. And every letter you sent, every word you wrote made me fall deeper. I know it is fast and I know the timing is complicated, but I cannot deny what I feel." "I love you too," Rosa whispered, the words feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. "I have been so afraid to feel this way, afraid to let anyone close, but I cannot help it. You have brought light into my darkness, Warren. You have made me want to live again instead of just surviving." Warren cupped her face in his large, calloused hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. "Then stop hiding," he said. "Come away with me. Come to my cabin in the mountains. No one will find you there, and you will not have to live in the shadows anymore. You can weave in the sunlight if you want to, or spend your days doing anything else that makes you happy. You will be safe, and you will be free, and you will be loved." "You are asking me to come live with you?" Rosa asked, her heart pounding. "I am asking you to marry me," Warren said. "If you will have me. I know I am a rough man and life in the mountains is hard, but I will spend every day of my life making sure you never regret choosing me. I will protect you and provide for you and love you with everything I have. Say yes, Rosa. Please say yes." Rosa looked into his eyes and saw her future there, a future she had not dared to hope for, a future filled with light and love and safety. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Warren pulled her close and kissed her, and it was like nothing Rosa had ever experienced. It was gentle and fierce all at once, full of promise and passion. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. "When?" Rosa asked. "When should we marry?" "As soon as possible. Tomorrow, if we can arrange it." "I do not want to wait, Rosa. I want to take you home to the mountains where you will be safe." "Tomorrow," Rosa agreed. "Let us marry tomorrow." They spent the rest of the evening making plans. Warren would speak to the minister first thing in the morning and arrange for a simple ceremony. Rosa would gather her few possessions and say goodbye to Mr. Morrison, thanking him for the work and the discretion he had shown her over the past 3 years. They would leave White Oaks immediately after the wedding, traveling north into the mountains before anyone could ask too many questions. When Warren finally left that night, reluctant to go but knowing it was proper, Rosa stood at her window and watched him walk away. For the first time in 3 years, she felt hope. The wedding took place the next afternoon in the small church at the edge of White Oaks. Mr. Morrison stood as a witness, and the minister's wife played a hymn on the old piano. Rosa wore the best dress she owned, a simple blue calico that made her dark eyes look even darker. Warren wore clean buckskins and a new shirt he had purchased that morning, and he looked nervous and happy and so handsome that Rosa could hardly breathe. They spoke their vows in quiet voices, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and told Warren he could kiss his bride, Warren pulled Rosa close and kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "Mrs. Ryder," he whispered against her lips. "My Rosa." "My Warren," she replied, and she felt the weight of 3 years of fear and hiding begin to lift from her shoulders. They left White Oaks within the hour, everything Rosa owned packed on Warren's horse and a mule he had purchased for her to ride. As they traveled north into the mountains, Rosa looked back only once at the town that had been her prison and her refuge. Then she turned her face forward, toward the future, toward the light. The journey to Warren's cabin took 2 days. They traveled through country so wild and beautiful that Rosa felt her heart expanding with every mile. Warren pointed out landmarks and told her stories about the land. And at night they camped under the stars, Warren holding her close and keeping her warm with his body heat and the blankets she had woven. On the second night, lying in Warren's arms with the fire crackling nearby and the stars spread out above them like diamonds on velvet, Rosa and Warren consummated their marriage. Warren was gentle and patient, mindful that Rosa had never been with a man before, and he took his time showing her the pleasure that 2 people could give each other. Rosa had been afraid, not knowing what to expect, but Warren's touch banished her fears, replacing them with sensations she had never imagined. They came together under the vast New Mexico sky, and Rosa felt herself truly alive for the first time in years. Afterward, wrapped in Warren's arms, Rosa traced the scars on his chest with her fingertips. "Where did you get these?" she asked. different places, different times. This one, he touched a long white line along his ribs, was from a bear. This one, a puckered scar on his shoulder, was from a bullet during the war. This one, a jagged mark on his forearm, was from a knife fight in a Denver saloon before I learned to avoid such places. You have lived a hard life, Rosa observed. It has had its hard moments, Warren agreed. But it led me to you, so I would not change any of it. Rosa kissed the scars, each one, blessing the journey that had brought this man to her. I feel the same way, she said. They reached the cabin the next afternoon, and Rosa's first sight of it made her smile. It was built of logs chinked with clay, solid and well made, nestled in a valley surrounded by tall pines. A stream ran nearby, and the valley was sheltered from the worst of the mountain winds. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Rosa looked at Warren in surprise. My friend Jacob lives about 5 miles from here, Warren explained. I asked him to come light a fire so the cabin would be warm when we arrived. He is a good man. You will like him. Inside, the cabin was simply furnished but comfortable. There was a large bed in one corner, a table and chairs, a cooking area with a wood stove, shelves lined with books and supplies. But what made Rosa gasp in delight was the south-facing wall, which was mostly windows, letting in floods of sunlight. I built it this way so I could see the valley, Warren said, but now I am glad for a different reason. You will be able to weave in the sunlight here, Rosa. No more working in the dark. Rosa turned to him, tears in her eyes. You do not know what that means to me. To be able to work in the light, to not hide anymore. You never have to hide again, Warren said, pulling her close. This is your home now, our home, and you are free here. In the days and weeks that followed, Rosa discovered what it meant to truly live. Warren built her a loom near the windows, using plans from a book, and working with a care and precision that touched her heart. She set it up and began to weave again. But now the threads seemed to shine in the sunlight, and the patterns she created were bolder and more beautiful than anything she had made in the darkness. Warren taught her about mountain life, showing her how to track animals and identify edible plants, how to fish in the stream and preserve meat for the winter. Rosa, in turn, taught him the finer points of cooking and made the cabin more of a home, adding curtains and cushions and small touches that softened the rough edges. They were happy, deliriously so. Warren was everything Rosa had never known she needed, strong and protective, but also gentle and considerate. He made her laugh with his dry humor and made her feel cherished with his constant, quiet attentiveness. At night, they explored each other's bodies with increasing confidence and passion, learning what brought pleasure and how to move together in perfect harmony. Jacob proved to be a frequent visitor, a grizzled old trapper who had known Warren for years. He accepted Rosa without question, seeming to understand that she had a past she did not wish to discuss. He brought them news from the occasional trips he made to town, and he became the first real friend Rosa had made since leaving Santa Fe. Winter came to the mountains in earnest in January, bringing snow that piled up past the windows and temperatures that dropped below zero. Rosa and Warren spent long days inside, Warren working on his traps and gear while Rosa wove at her loom, both of them content in each other's company. At night, they huddled together in their bed, Warren's large body keeping Rosa warm, talking about everything and nothing until they fell asleep in each other's arms. One evening in late February, as they sat by the fire after supper, Rosa told Warren that she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had wanted to be sure before she said anything. Warren's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He pulled her into his lap and held her close, his hand splayed protectively over her still flat stomach. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "Our baby." "Rosa, You have made me the happiest man alive." "You are not worried?" Rosa asked. "About bringing a child into this hard life? I am not worried. We will manage. Children have been born in the mountains before, and ours will be strong and healthy. Besides," he kissed her forehead, "I grew up in a city mansion with servants and every luxury, and I was miserable. Our child will have something far more valuable than material comfort. They will have parents who love each other and who love them. They will have freedom and beauty and space to grow." "What more could anyone want?" Rosa relaxed against him. "When did you become so wise?" "The day I met you," Warren replied, and Rosa laughed and kissed him. As winter gave way to spring and Rosa's body changed with the growing life inside her, Warren became even more protective and attentive. He insisted she rest more, taking over most of the household chores and refusing to let her do any heavy lifting. Rosa protested at first, but she had to admit that she enjoyed being cared for so thoroughly. In April, a late spring storm trapped them in the cabin for 3 days, the snow falling so thick and fast that they could barely see the trees 20 feet away. On the second night, as they lay in bed listening to the wind howl around the cabin, Rosa told Warren about her mother. "She was beautiful," Rosa said. "Not in a conventional way, but she had this light about her, this joy that nothing could extinguish. Even when my father died and left us with nothing, even when she had to work long hours weaving to support us, she always found reasons to smile. She taught me everything I know about weaving, but she also taught me about resilience and grace." "She would be proud of you," Warren said, "of the woman you have become, of how you survived when everything was stacked against you." "I think she would like you," Rosa replied. "She always said I should wait for a man who was as strong as I was, who would not be threatened by my independence. I never thought I would find such a man, but then you appeared out of the darkness and changed everything." "I was the one in darkness," Warren said. "I did not realize it until I met you, but I was. I had convinced myself that solitude was what I wanted, that I was content with my isolated life. But you showed me what I was missing. You brought color and warmth and meaning to my existence. You saved me, Rosa, just as surely as I saved you that night." They made love slowly and tenderly, celebrating each other and the life they had created together. Afterward, Rosa fell asleep with Warren's hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, listening to his steady breathing and feeling more at peace than she had ever thought possible. Summer came, and with it the full bloom of Rosa's pregnancy. Her belly grew large, and she moved with increasing awkwardness, but Warren thought she had never been more beautiful. He told her so daily, and he showed her with his actions, fetching her water when she was thirsty, rubbing her aching back and swollen feet, building her a rocking chair so she could sit comfortably on the porch in the evenings. Jacob helped Warren prepare for the birth, bringing herbs and supplies from the occasional trips he made to town and beyond. He had helped birth more than a few babies in his long years in the mountains, and he assured them both that everything would be fine. In late August, on a hot afternoon when the cicadas were singing in the trees, Rosa's labor began. Warren sent for Jacob immediately, and then he held Rosa's hand and tried to remain calm even though he was terrified. He had faced bears and blizzards and bullets, but nothing had ever scared him as much as the thought of something happening to Rosa or their child. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Rosa was exhausted and in pain, but she was also remarkably strong, bearing each contraction with a determination that made Warren love her even more. He stayed with her the entire time, ignoring Jacob's suggestion that he might want to step outside, supporting her and encouraging her and marveling at her courage. When their son finally entered the world just after dawn, His first cry was the most beautiful sound Warren had ever heard. Jacob cleaned the baby and wrapped him in one of the soft blankets Rosa had woven, then placed him in Rosa's arms. Rosa looked down at her son, at his tiny, perfect face and his shock of dark hair, and she started to cry. "He is beautiful," she whispered. "Warren, he is perfect." Warren, who had been so strong throughout the entire ordeal, felt tears streaming down his own face as he looked at his wife and son. "He is perfect because he is half you," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed and wrapping his arms around both of them. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, but now, looking at their son, Rosa knew. "Matthew," she said, "after my father, Matthew Ryder." "Matthew," Warren repeated, touching one finger to his son's tiny hand. The baby grasped it reflexively, and Warren felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost painful. "Welcome to the world, Matthew. Your mother and I have been waiting for you." Jacob left them alone after making sure Rosa was comfortable and had everything she needed. Warren lay down beside Rosa and Matthew on the bed, one arm around his wife, gazing at their son with wonder. "I cannot believe he is ours," he said. "I cannot believe we made something so perfect." "We did," Rosa said, her voice tired but happy. "And we will raise him to be strong and kind, like his father." "And creative and brave, like his mother," Warren added. He kissed Rosa's forehead, then Matthew's. "I love you both more than I have words to express." The months after Matthew's birth were a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. Warren proved to be a devoted father, rising with Rosa when the baby cried, changing diapers without complaint, walking the floor with Matthew when he was fussy. He built a cradle that rocked smoothly and carved small toys for his son to play with as he grew. Rosa, despite the exhaustion of new motherhood, felt more content than she had ever been. She had a family, people who loved her and needed her, a home where she was safe and free. When Matthew was 6 months old, Rosa received a letter that Jacob brought up from White Oaks. It was from Mr. Morrison, and Rosa opened it with some trepidation, worried that something from her past had caught up with her. But the letter contained unexpected news. "Dear Mrs. Ryder, I hope this letter finds you well and happy with your new husband. I wanted to write to inform you of some news that I thought you should know. The sheriff who was looking for you in Santa Fe died of pneumonia this past winter. His replacement, a man with a more progressive view of such matters, reviewed the old case files and determined that there was insufficient evidence to pursue charges against you. The case has been closed and your name cleared. I thought you would want to know that you are free to live openly without fear of prosecution. However, I understand if you have built a good life where you are and have no desire to return. I simply wanted you to know that the shadow hanging over you has been lifted. I often think of the work you did for me and the quiet dignity with which you conducted yourself. You deserved better than what life dealt you, and I am glad you found happiness. With warm regards, Thomas Morrison. Rosa read the letter 3 times, hardly daring to believe it. She was free. Truly free. The charges had been dropped, the case closed. She could go wherever she wanted, do whatever she wanted without fear of being arrested and hanged. She showed the letter to Warren, who read it and then pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I am so glad," he said. "So glad that you can have that peace of mind. Though I must confess, even if the charges had not been dropped, I would have kept you safe. Nothing and no one would have taken you from me." "I know," Rosa said, pressing her face against his chest. "But it feels good to know that I am no longer a fugitive, that I can hold my head up without fear. I can be Rosa Ryder in truth, not just in my heart." "You have always been Rosa Ryder in every way that matters," Warren said, "but I understand what you mean. This is a gift, Rosa." a chance to truly leave the past behind and embrace the future. That night, after Matthew was asleep, Rosa and Warren went outside and stood on the porch, looking out at the valley bathed in moonlight. Warren wrapped his arms around Rosa from behind, and she leaned back against his solid warmth. "I have been thinking," Rosa said. "Now that I am free, there are things I would like to do. I would like to visit Santa Fe, see my mother's grave, perhaps make peace with that part of my life. I would like to expand my weaving, maybe sell some pieces in larger towns. I would like to live fully instead of just safely." "Then we will do all of those things," Warren said. "We will make whatever life you want, Rosa. The mountains will always be here, but we do not have to hide in them. We can go wherever you wish, do whatever makes you happy." "What makes me happy is being with you," Rosa said, turning in his arms to face him. "But I think I am ready to step fully into the light now. You brought me out of the shadows, Warren, and I do not want to waste that gift." "Then we will not," Warren promised, kissing her. "We will live in the light together, all three of us. We will build a life that is full and rich and open. Whatever you want, Rosa. Whatever you dream." Over the next few years, that is exactly what they did. They traveled to Santa Fe, where Rosa visited her mother's grave and stood before it without fear, telling her mother about Warren and Matthew and the life she had built. They visited White Oaks, where Rosa was welcomed openly and her weaving was celebrated. Word spread about the quality of her work, and soon she was receiving commissions from as far away as Santa Fe and Albuquerque. Warren built an addition to the cabin to accommodate Rosa's growing business, a large room with even more windows where she could work and teach. Because Rosa, remembering her own mother teaching her, wanted to pass on her skills to others, she began taking on apprentices, young women from nearby settlements who wanted to learn the craft. The cabin in the valley became known as a place of beauty and creativity, and Rosa became known as a master weaver and a teacher. Matthew grew into a strong, curious boy, as comfortable in the wilderness as his father, and as creative as his mother. Warren taught him to track and hunt and survive in the mountains, while Rosa taught him to appreciate beauty and to express himself through art. He was well loved and well adjusted, and watching him grow brought both Rosa and Warren endless joy. When Matthew was 4 years old, Rosa gave birth to twin girls, Clara and Catherine. Warren was beside himself with delight, holding one daughter in each massive arm and declaring them the most beautiful babies ever born. Rosa laughed at his bias but had to admit they were pretty wonderful. The twins had Warren's pale eyes and Rosa's dark hair, and they were a handful from the moment they entered the world. The cabin felt full and loud and perfect. Warren expanded it again, adding bedrooms and more space, building a home that could contain their growing family. Jacob remained a frequent visitor and became an honorary grandfather to the children, teaching them mountain lore and telling them stories about the old days. On a warm evening in June when Matthew was 7 and the twins were 3, Rosa and Warren sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard. Matthew was building something elaborate with sticks, while the twins chased each other around in circles, shrieking with laughter. "Did you ever imagine this?" Rosa asked, taking Warren's hand. "When you were living alone in the mountains, did you ever dream you would have all this?" "Never," Warren admitted. "I thought I would live and die alone, and I had made my peace with that. But then I found you in the darkness, Rosa, or maybe you found me. Either way, my life began that night. Everything before was just preparation for you for this, for all of it." "I was so afraid," Rosa said softly. "Afraid to trust you, afraid to hope, afraid to step out of the shadows. But you made me brave, Warren. You made me believe that I deserved to be happy, that I deserved to be loved." "You deserved all of that and more," Warren said. You are the strongest person I know, Rosa. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you not only survived, you thrived. You built a life and a business and a family. You are remarkable. We are remarkable, Rosa corrected. Together, neither of us could have done this alone. True, Warren agreed. He pulled her close and kissed her temple. I love you, Rosa Ryder. I loved you that first night, I love you now, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond. I love you too, Rosa said. My mountain man, my protector, the man who brought me into the light and loved me there. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains and their children play, both of them filled with gratitude for the life they had built together. The shadows were behind them now, and ahead lay only light and love and endless possibilities. 20 years later, when Rosa and Warren were in their late 40s, they sat in that same spot on the porch, now surrounded by grandchildren. Matthew had married a girl from White Oaks and had given them 3 grandchildren. Clara had fallen in love with a rancher and had 2 children of her own. Catherine, the adventurous one, had gone east to study art but returned every summer with stories of the wider world. Rosa's hair was streaked with gray now, and Warren's beard was more white than dark, but they were still strong and healthy and deeply in love. Rosa's weaving was known throughout New Mexico territory and beyond, and Warren had expanded his work to include guiding and outfitting hunting expeditions, using his knowledge of the mountains to help others experience their beauty. They had built something lasting, something real. They had taken their broken, fearful beginnings and turned them into a legacy of love and family and honest work. The cabin in the valley had become a home in the truest sense, a place where children and grandchildren gathered, where apprentice weavers learned their craft, where travelers and friends found welcome. I have been thinking, Warren said one evening after the last of the visitors had left and they were alone again, about building a workshop down by the stream, a place where the grandchildren could learn woodworking and carving. I could teach them the way I wish someone had taught me when I was young. That is a wonderful idea, Rosa said. And I could expand the weaving room, make space for more looms. Some of my former apprentices have expressed interest in coming back to teach the next generation. We are getting older, Warren observed, but I do not feel old when I am with you. I feel the same way I felt that first night when I saw you standing in the darkness trying to be brave. I feel alive and grateful and lucky beyond measure. I feel the same, Rosa said. She leaned her head on his shoulder and they rocked slowly, the chair Warren had built so many years ago creaking in a familiar, comforting rhythm. Sometimes I think about that night, about what would have happened if you had not been there. Where would I be now? Would I still be hiding, weaving in the darkness, afraid of every shadow? Do not think about that, Warren said gently. What matters is what did happen. We found each other against all odds. We built this life together. And Rosa, what a life it has been. I would not change a single moment of it, not even the hard parts, because they all led us here. Neither would I, Rosa agreed. She lifted her head and kissed him, the kiss of 2 people who had loved each other for decades and would love each other for whatever time remained. Thank you, Warren. For everything. For saving me that night, for loving me, for building this life with me, for bringing me into the light. Thank you for letting me, Warren replied. For trusting me with your truth, for taking a chance on a rough mountain man who did not know the first thing about love until he met you. You changed my life, Rosa. You made it worth living. They sat together as the stars came out, one by one, filling the vast New Mexico sky. Inside the cabin, they could hear the soft sounds of their granddaughter Emma, who was staying with them for the summer, getting ready for bed. Tomorrow there would be more work, more weaving, more teaching, more living. But tonight, there was just this moment. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk into the light together, and it was enough. It was everything. The years continued to pass with gentle grace. Warren and Rosa grew older but remained active and engaged with life. They watched their children thrive and their grandchildren grow, adding more branches to the family tree they had planted together. The cabin in the valley became a landmark, known throughout the territory as a place of beauty and craftsmanship and warm hospitality. Rosa never returned to working in the shadows. She wove in the bright sunlight that streamed through the windows Warren had built for her, creating pieces that were exhibited in galleries as far away as San Francisco and New York. But she never forgot where she had come from, and she made a point of helping other women who were struggling, who needed a second chance, who were hiding in shadows of their own. Warren remained strong and vital well into his 60s, still trapping and hunting and guiding, though he let his sons and sons-in-law take on more of the physical work as the years went on. He was respected throughout the mountains and valleys, known as a man of integrity and skill, someone you could count on in a crisis. On their 35th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren threw them a celebration at the cabin. People came from all over, friends and former apprentices and business associates, all gathering to honor the couple who had built such a remarkable life together. There was music and dancing and food, and Warren and Rosa danced together under the stars the way they had on their wedding night so many years before. 35 years, Rosa marveled. Where did the time go? Into every moment we have lived, Warren replied. Into every day we have spent together, every child we have raised, every challenge we have faced. Time well spent, Rosa. Time well loved. They stood together in the center of the dancing area, swaying slowly while their family and friends whirled around them. Rosa looked up at Warren, at the face she knew better than her own, lined with age but still handsome, still beloved. "If I could go back," she said, "back to that terrified girl weaving in the darkness, I would tell her to hold on. I would tell her that light is coming, that love is coming, that everything she thinks is lost will be found again in ways she cannot imagine. I would tell her about you." "And if I could go back to the lonely man in the mountains," Warren replied, "I would tell him that his life is about to begin, that he will meet someone who will show him what love really means, who will give him purpose and joy and a reason to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. I would tell him about you." They kissed, and their children and grandchildren cheered, and the celebration continued late into the night. When everyone had finally left or gone to bed, Warren and Rosa stood on their porch one more time, looking out at the valley that had been their home for so many years. "I am tired," Rosa admitted, "but it is a good tired, the tired that comes from a full, well-lived day." "Come to bed then," Warren said, taking her hand. "We have earned our rest." They went inside, and Warren helped Rosa get ready for bed the way he had done for decades, gentle and attentive. They climbed into their bed, the same bed where their children had been conceived and born, where they had held each other through joy and sorrow, illness and health, all the moments that made up a shared life. Rosa curled against Warren's side, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you," she whispered. "Today, tomorrow, always." "Always," Warren echoed, his arms tightening around her. "My Rosa, my light." They fell asleep that way, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a love that had lasted a lifetime. The moon rose over the mountains, bathing the valley in silver light, and in the cabin, all was peaceful and well. Warren Ryder passed away quietly in his sleep at the age of 72, with Rosa beside him as she had been for nearly 4 decades. He had been ill for several months, his strong body finally succumbing to the years of hard living, but he had faced death with the same courage he had faced everything else. His last words were for Rosa, telling her that he loved her and that she had given him the best life any man could hope for. Rosa mourned him deeply, but she did not let grief consume her. She had loved Warren too much to dishonor his memory by giving up on life. She continued her work, teaching and weaving, spending time with her children and grandchildren, keeping the cabin and the life they had built together alive and thriving. On clear nights, she would sit on the porch in the rocking chair Warren had made for her and talk to him, telling him about her day, sharing her thoughts, feeling his presence in the wind and the stars and the mountains that had been his home. 3 years after Warren's death, Rosa gathered her family around her. She was 75 years old and still sharp-minded and capable, but she could feel her own time coming. "I want you to know," she told her children and grandchildren, "that I have lived the most extraordinary life. I started in darkness and fear, and I ended in light and love. Your grandfather gave me that gift, and you have all been part of it. Keep this place alive. Keep weaving and creating and loving each other. That is my legacy to you." A few weeks later, on a warm autumn evening when the aspens were turning gold, Rosa Reed Ryder died peacefully in her sleep. Her family buried her beside Warren in the small cemetery they had established in a beautiful spot overlooking the valley. The grave markers were simple but elegant, carved by Warren's own hands years before, when they had first started talking about mortality and what came after. The cabin remained in the family, passed down through generations, always a place of creativity and welcome. Rosa's looms were preserved, and her descendants continued to weave, keeping her techniques and patterns alive. The story of Rosa and Warren became a family legend, the tale of a woman who had lived in shadows and a mountain man who had brought her into the light, and the great love they had shared. Their legacy lived on not just in their descendants, but in everyone who had been touched by their generosity, their kindness, and their example of what true love looked like. They had taken their brokenness and built something beautiful. They had found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk into the light together. And in doing so, they had shown that redemption was possible, that love could heal even the deepest wounds, and that a life well lived was the greatest gift anyone could give. The mountains stood eternal and unchanging, watching over the valley where Rosa and Warren had made their home. And if you visited that place on a quiet evening, when the wind moved through the pines and the stream babbled over the rocks, you might feel their presence still. Two souls who had loved each other so completely that their love had become part of the very landscape, woven into the fabric of that wild and beautiful place like the threads in one of Rosa's blankets, strong and enduring and made to last forever.